Hey, good to see you guys today. I'm here at the Roundhouse Rundown. This is episode 22. I'm Senator Craig Brandt, the Republican whip here in the Senate, and we are going to talk a little bit today, a little more about the proposals for the special session that is supposedly coming up in July. I'll say supposedly because I'm starting to get a little skeptical that we're going to have it. So we'll see, but apparently we're going to come in for a special session on July 18th, and the governor asked the Courts, Corrections, and Justice Interim Committee to pretty much set the agenda. That's very abnormal, by the way, just so you know. Interim committees don't really set agendas for special sessions. That's the governor's job. But let's talk a little bit about that. And, the governor brought some proposals to this interim committee, and I'll just say that they didn't go over very well. Not only did they not go over very well with the Republican side, in fact, they probably went over better with the Republican side of the aisle. They went over horribly with the Democrat side of the aisle. So her own party is like, no, I don't think so. So we're going to talk a little bit about what she proposed and why this pushback from the legislature. Well, first of all, I think we have to, realize that this is a different year than most years where we would have a special session because this is an election year, right? So all of us are busy with our campaigns, with other people's campaigns. We're all trying to help get people elected or reelected on both sides of the aisle. I'm working with a bunch of Republicans trying to pick up some seats so we can have a little bit more of a, some more balance in our legislature. So Monday, last week on Monday, the governor's staff presented some of the bills for the special session that the governor has been thinking about. And one of them was what they called a complete retooling of our state's criminal competency protocol. Now, this is a little bit odd because very few of our cases that come before judges is this ever used as a defense. And very few of the cases do DAs bring to the judges and say, don't think this guy is competent to stand trial. In fact, Senator Cervantes, the chair of the committee, brought up that only 4% of cases. And so, I think there was some pushback on this because she wants to run this pilot program and, we won't even see what the results are for a couple of years down the road. Special sessions are supposed to be to deal with crisis. They're supposed to be to deal with emergencies. They're supposed to be to deal with things that we can't wait until the next general session to do. So something we're not even going to see the results of for a couple of years, that's what we're going to talk about during a special session. I think that was part of the pushback on this is why would this be something we'd talk about in the special session? The other issue is, and it'll be on all of these proposals, but I'm going to bring it up here because I think this is where it could really have a lot of unintended consequences. Every time we get in a rush on legislation, I'm going to take you back to a few years ago when the governor really, really wanted to legalize marijuana. Now, I don't know where you sit on that issue, but that original bill, every session we end up having to come back and work on it again and fix this and fix that because it was rushed through in a 2-day special, and it was a freaking nightmare. It was a mess. And so we have to come back constantly and fix that bill, fix that law, because there's a lot of unintended consequences on it, a lot of issues from it. Excuse me. Apparently, I didn't sleep enough last night. But, a lot of issues on that we keep having to come back to and having to deal with. That's what I think will happen if we really try to quickly solve and quickly look at this criminal competency. This is a very important issue that if someone is having some kind of a mental health issue, someone has a mental health crisis, or let's just be honest, someone's just crazy, those issues need to be dealt with, and we don't need to rush that process. We need to make sure that we're putting it together so the judges and the doctors can actually look at some of those things. The last thing we want is to put laws in place that have unintended consequences, like some laws that we've seen in the past. Like, California has a case that's pretty well known. It's called the Twinkie defense, where someone overate Twinkies and got this sugar high and went out and killed people. And he literally got off on what's called the Twinkie defense. So we don't want to put in law such things to where we can have unintended consequences by someone just being able to claim, well, I ate a Twinkie. Yeah, I don't think so. Right. Now, understand that competency, unlike what the TV shows show you, is if you get deemed as incompetent to stand trial, it doesn't mean that you go back into society. Now, there's some cases where you would, like if it was a nonviolent misdemeanor, you might, right? Until, they might put you back on the streets and make you get outpatient treatment. But if it's anything violent, or if it's a felony, then you're going to be put into an inpatient program until you are competent to stand trial. At that point, you're going to actually go to trial and face the consequences of the action you took. So you're not getting off and walking scot-free. You're actually going to go into, a treatment facility until you're competent. Now, there are some people that are never competent and they spend the rest of their lives in those facilities. And that's great. They get the medical treatment they need, and society isn't threatened by their being free on the streets. So that's kind of the way that works. I don't think that's a crisis for us to deal with, but it is something we need to be looking at. It's something I think would be great for the Courts, Corrections, and Justice Committee to take the entire interim and look at. But to try to rush even them to come up with an idea for that, I think could have some really unintended consequences. Another one, the governor, and we've talked about this one, the panhandling issue and hitchhiking issue. She's calling it the unsafe public roadways access. Well, first of all, this has been tried, right? There's been nationally several places have tried to restrict panhandling or say you can't panhandle. And actually, the courts have ruled it's unconstitutional. And so you can require that they do it in a safe way. You can require that they not be aggressive, those types of things. But what you cannot do is say that they can't do it. And so, those are things that, again, is that a crisis? Is that worth us coming in $50,000 a day? Remember, is that worth us coming in for 2 or 3 days, up to maybe $150,000 for us to come in and deal with that issue? No. Felony in possession of a firearm. Man. Well, this has been carried, especially by Representative Bill Ream, for at least 7 years now. Yeah, that's right, 7 years. And the Dems kill it every time. They kill it every year. What, are they all of a sudden going to switch their minds and now they're going to support it? Now, honestly, I think it's crazy that they kill this, right? They talk about guns and how guns are so horrible and how guns are so dangerous. A gun's just a tool. But when you're a felon, you're not allowed to have a firearm. And yet when we have tried to increase penalties for people having a firearm, just being a felon in possession of a firearm, they don't want to touch it. And I've got to question, what's the real motive, right? I mean, we know, right? You and I know. The real motive is to get rid of firearms. But apparently they're fine with felons having them, just not you and I, the person who's followed the law and have no felonies. We're not supposed to have a firearm, but felons can have them all they want, according to the Democrats and according to the way they've killed this bill every year that it's been proposed. They've killed it. But again, this is stuff supposed to be brought up because it's an emergency, because we're in a crisis, and we are in a crisis. But none of these things are going to change that. None of these things are going to fix it overnight. Democrats in the legislature have shot down every Republican attempt to address crime. In fact, when Governor Martinez was in office, they mocked Republicans for being all crime all the time. You guys remember that one? They mocked us because we were trying to get ahead of the crime issue. They kept ignoring it. It kept growing. They kept ignoring it. It continues to grow. And now all of a sudden, 6 years into her administration, I know that's scary, right? 6 years into her administration, the governor's finally decided, well, maybe we should worry about crime. I'm having a hard time buying it. I'm having a hard time buying that this won't be somehow about trying to violate your and my constitutional rights when it comes to things like your right to bear arms, or things like your ability to protect yourself, or your things like your free speech, or due process. Those are the kind of things that concerns me that this governor will try to do. So I'm very skeptical. I also think that because there's no buy-in, so, someone asked me what the odds are that we're having a special today, and I haven't put any odds to it. I'm going to maybe call some guys in Vegas and see if we can get some odds down. But just kidding, I'm not doing that. But, I don't think we're going to have a special session, because honestly, I think it'd be stupid for the governor to have a special session. And there's one thing this governor's not. She's not stupid. She's conniving. She likes to go behind people's backs, but she's not stupid. So there's something going on. It concerns me as to what's going on. What's the change now that makes her want to address crime? Now, don't get me wrong. I worked with the governor during the last session trying to address crime. She couldn't get any buy-in from the other side. Does she have buy-in now? Or was she telling me one thing to my face and telling them something else? I'm making it look like I'm strong on crime, but kill the bill. I don't really want it to get to me. I don't know. I honestly don't, because some of the bills that we carried last session, they made common sense. Oh, that's probably the problem right there. It was common sense. That's it. I think I figured it out. Thank you guys for helping me walk through that. I'm pretty sure it's just because it's a common sense thing to do, right? RICO, organized crime, it ought to cover things like human trafficking. That's organized crime. Ours doesn't. So fixing our law to cover things like that, and drug smuggling, those kind of issues, those are common sense. But Cervantes wouldn't hear him in Judiciary Committee. I don't know why. He never would tell me. He would never even address it. So, I just wonder, right? So anyway, that interim committee went pretty badly for the governor, I would say. Cervantes on the competency, he brought up the 4%. And then Senator Nybert, he's like, okay, so when I go home after session, what am I supposed to tell my constituents that we did? What am I going to tell my constituents that we accomplished that's going to make them feel safer? Because that's what we're supposedly coming in here in July for, is to pass bills that will make our constituents safer. I don't know about you, but I don't feel much safer about any of the things that I've read off here. None of the things that the governor proposed make me feel safer at all. And they don't address the issue of crime, in my opinion. Representative Alan Martinez, that's my rep. And Representative Cadena, so one Republican, one Democrat. They're both like, we're really troubled by such broad issues being addressed and rushed in a short time period. The governor's talking about coming in for 3 days. We spent 30 days here in January and February. 30 days. We couldn't get anywhere on these issues. But we're going to come in and in 3 days, we're going to solve them? No, I'm sorry. Ain't going to happen. Not without real proposals. Not without things that both sides already agree on. And I'm just going to tell you, when it comes to crime, there's not things that we all agree on. The Democrats want to bury their head in the sand and act like crime doesn't exist. I should say the progressives. I'm sorry for those of you who are Democrats and aren't progressives. The progressives just want to bury their head in the sand and act like crime doesn't exist. And we as Republicans want to actually deal with the crime issues. We want it to actually be a crime to go into a store and rob it. But I can go into a store, and as long as I don't go over a certain dollar amount, I can steal whatever I want. Seems like unless you kill the wrong person, you don't hardly get charged with a crime in New Mexico anymore. Kill the right person, you're fine. So you got to be careful of who you kill. I mean, crimes aren't being solved, and when they are, people aren't being prosecuted. So the governor's response to how bad the committee went, this is kind of interesting. Making New Mexico a safer place for all requires innovative ideas and hard work. Yeah, don't you love her placating? It's kind of like, when she told us all to wear masks, told us all to wash our hands. It's like the kindergarten teacher talking to kindergartners. I don't know about you, I'm not a kindergartner. I have no doubt we can do it if lawmakers will drop their skepticism. Well, I am skeptical. I'm skeptical that she's going to even call one to begin with, but I'm also skeptical, that the progressives in the Democrat wing of the party will support anything that is tougher on criminals. And then she says, roll up their sleeves and come to a special session ready to tackle the challenge before us. Roll up our sleeves? Man, we as Republicans have been working these issues for as long as I've been up here. We've been carrying bills to toughen sentences since I've been here. One of the first things that the Democrats did, that the progressives did, was lower sentences. They got rid of the death penalty. That's how we became safer. We got rid of the death penalty. The death penalty needs to be there. It needs to be there as a tool. But no, we got rid of it. The Democrats, like I said before, they spent the entire time attacking Governor Martinez for being all crime all the time. So what's going on here? Well, I mentioned right off the bat it's an election year. I mean, let's just be honest. Crime is out of control and Democrats are in trouble because they have been in charge of this state, okay, with the exception of 2 years that we had the House under Martinez. They have been in charge of this state for the last 100 years. Oh, occasionally we get a Republican governor, but we never get a Republican governor in both chambers like the Democrats have had. Probably out of the last 100 years, the Democrats have controlled all 3 branches of government for 80 of them. And crime is out of control. Because what they did is they came in and they made it easier to commit crimes. And they made it harder to charge people with crimes. They lowered penalties. They pushed through a constitutional amendment that was basically, we were all lied to by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time, who was up here lobbying, even though the law says he can't. And we passed a constitutional amendment that made you unsafe by making it where you can't hold on to criminals. That was the revolving door issue that we're facing now. We got to go back and fix that. Tried during this last session. We tried a constitutional amendment to fix the Constitution. We tried a law to fix those issues. They went nowhere. So now they're in trouble. We have an election and people are afraid. People are afraid to leave their homes. People are afraid to go downtown Albuquerque. But the crime is not just there anymore. Oh, my word. Yeah. The crime is everywhere. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, you look at what's happened. You've got last week, a 21-year-old shot his stepmom at a high school graduation. Shot her in the neck. No idea why. Don't know the circumstance. It's not right, no matter what the circumstance. But right there in Albuquerque. And then what happened in Clovis. Wow. Well, here we are, small town, New Mexico. Clovis doesn't get much crime. And I don't know if you remember, but just last week again, what happened in Clovis, 2 21-year-old moms were shot to death. This guy was so brazen and so evil that he shot a 5-year-old in the face. A 5-year-old. And then he kidnapped a 10-month-old baby. Now, thank God they got the baby back. But that baby doesn't have a mom anymore because he murdered her mom. Man, folks, the crime is spreading. Rio Rancho is one of those communities we hardly ever see homicides. And yet we've seen more than one this year. We've seen a couple of them. And most of them have been domestic violence situations. But yet nothing in the proposals that I have seen have been anything to deal with domestic violence. Had 2 officers have been killed this year. One down in Las Cruces, one in Santa Rosa. You know, two men that gave their lives for us to be free. And we need to remember them and the sacrifice they made. But again, we just crime all over the state right now. We keep bringing crime bills. And I will tell you, if we end up having this special session, we as Republicans, we're going to take it seriously. And we're going to bring the bills that we think will help solve the problems in New Mexico. We're going to bring bills to deal with the fentanyl dealers, to target fentanyl dealers, to get the fentanyl off our streets. We are losing young people daily to fentanyl overdoses. This stuff is dangerous. This stuff is not to be played with. But they didn't want to take it seriously in the last 30-day session, so I don't think they're going to take it seriously this time, but we are. We're going to bring bills to combat organized crime, like I was talking about, that RICO statute. We're going to bring that again. We're going to bring bills talking about funding for Border Patrol, for surveillance and communications equipment. Because one of the issues that we have is our Border Patrol, there's dead spots all over the place, and they can't communicate even when they get in trouble with each other, let alone with state police or with the local sheriff's department. So we want to make sure that we get some towers out there, we get the equipment out there so that they can communicate and they're not left out there by themselves. But more needs to happen, and we're going to continue to work on more. We've got several bills in the hopper being written. We've got several bills we'll continue to talk about as we get closer and closer to this supposed special session. And we're going to take it seriously, and we're going to bring what we think needs to be done in the state of New Mexico. I challenge the Democrats to do the same. Take it seriously. Take the fact that your constituents, yours and my constituents, do not feel safe. The fact that USA News published an article naming New Mexico worst state in the country for crime. Worst state in the country for crime. That is not a list that we should ever be on, folks. You know, we used to say this was an Albuquerque issue, and I like to dog on Albuquerque. So if you live in Albuquerque, please indulge me. And I'll just ask your forgiveness ahead of time. I used to live in Albuquerque. I like to dog on Albuquerque a little bit. But I can't hardly bring this up just about Albuquerque anymore. It's moving up the hill to Rio Rancho. It's moved into Bernalillo, the town of, not the county. It's moved into Las Lunas, Belen, Santa Fe, Las Cruces, Santa Rosa, Tucumcari. All of them have seen increases in crime. Because this is a statewide issue. And as long as we continue to show that we don't support our law enforcement officers, with bills like we passed several years ago with Senate Bill 5, we're not going to get a handle on this thing. And as long as we allow DAs to continue to not charge people when they have the evidence to charge them, we're not going to get a handle on this thing. Let's start taking it seriously. Let's make our place a safer community, and let's get off of this list by USA News. Let's become one of the best states on the crime issue. Let's become one of the safest states. I know we can do it. It's going to take you and me working together to change who represents you in Santa Fe. Please join us. Continue to watch our podcast. We'll continue to talk about what's coming up. You can follow us on our Senate page, our Senate Facebook page, Republican Senate page. You can follow me on my page on my Facebook. You can also follow me at Craig4NM on Twitter. I don't get on there personally very much, but we do post these on there. But you can follow me there. Keep in touch with us. If you want to email me about one of our podcasts, or you want to email me about some suggestions for future podcasts, we'd love to hear from you. Senate 40, spell that out, FORTY @gmail.com. Senate is SENATE, just in case you're bad at spelling like me. Senate 40 @gmail.com. And if it's a good idea, we'll put it together and we'll do a podcast about it. And if we really like your idea and you want to be on the podcast, hey, we're always looking to bring people in, because I know I'm interesting, but bringing in someone else makes it even more interesting. So join us, keep us here, drop us a line, let us know your ideas that we can do as we keep you informed of what's happening in and around the state. Interim committees are going to be starting up soon. We'll start talking about some of those. We also keep those posted so that you know what's coming up in your communities. And I'm going to be all over the state the next year at interim committees, so I'd love to meet you. Come by one of the interim committees and say hi. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week. Bye-bye.